Rebecca, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
How was vacation?
It was great. I just got back from Disney, so thank you for those few days off.
Must have been fun.
It was a lot. It wasn't really a vacation, so I might need to take a few more days.
So take a couple
to
more days,
relax.
yeah.
That's okay. No, it was good though. A lot of time with family. That was well
How'd
needed.
the baby like it?
She loved it. She loved seeing all the characters. She loved going on the rides, all the food, mostly being with her cousins. But yeah, it was
Where'd you stay?
good. So we stayed on Park at one of the like resorts that they have for kids. I forget what it's called, but it was nice because it was close to the park, so we could just like hop right in.
Okay,
It was
yeah,
really good.
we used to stay at the first one on the tram.
Oh, okay.
Forgot the name of it.
Yeah, we were right off like the Skyliner, which was really nice because you just like hop on and go to the different parks.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
it was the first one right off, so it was really convenient. Then you
Yeah.
had a bunch more, and then I think we stayed at Animal Kingdom one year.
Oh, those ones really nice.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Giraffes come up to you. You
Oh.
would love it. Yeah, they come right up to your windows.
I
And
don't need that.
you feed them.
I don't need animals.
So,
I don't have people to deal with. I don't need a
lions
giraffe.
running around and
No thanks.
alligators and all kinds of crazy shit. You know, it's popping around. So let's get into it. So where'd you grow up, Rebecca?
I grew up on Long Island, in Malvern, and went to school there.
Where'd you go to school?
Went to high school in Malvern, and then I went to college at Trinity in West Hartford, and then I was there for a few years, and then I transferred to NYU.
Okay.
So
What did you
finished.
graduate with?
English Lit.
You're going to be a teacher.
I thought I was going to be, and then I
Okay.
just didn't end up doing that. I ended up in fashion because I feel like back then, growing up on Long Island, you just figured you'd had to work in the city. If you're into that, you had to work in fashion or publication or something like that. So
So where'd you
Did
start in fashion?
so I interned at 17 magazine. If
That's
that is
so funny. My
even
father-in-law
still.
ran that. I
Really?
never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never knew that. He
Yeah.
ran Prime Media,
Yeah. Yeah.
who owned 17 Magazine.
Yeah. So I was there for a little bit. And then
Did you? I probably shot a dog. Nick Paccioni. Did you know him or not?
no.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was only there for a little bit. And then I got into the sales. So I did like account exec for jewelry and different like fashion lines. And I did PR for a little bit. And then I kind of worked my way back to Long Island and started working.
Where was 17 Magazine located?
It was in Times Square when I first started working with them on Broadway, and then they moved to the Hearst Building on the
Okay.
Upper West Side. So
So I remember my father-in-law was on Hudson Street.
okay, yeah,
downtown.
I wasn't there when I was at that point.
Okay, but I think he oversaw all of them, like
Yeah,
17, the Daily Race and
yeah,
Form.
yeah, yeah,
They had a bunch of them, I think. Prime
Mhm.
Media on a bunch of those
Yeah.
lines. Wow, I never knew you worked there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And then what made you switch over? Because when
yeah.
you were with us, who were you working for?
So funny enough, so I actually got introduced to Keller Williams when I bought my first house with Karen and Glima, who obviously you know.
Special type of person, yep.
And that was back in like 2010, I want to say. So I was just working some other jobs and things like that, and was working on Long Island again. And I was looking to supplement my income, so I reached out to her. This was back in like 2016, I want to say. And she put me in touch with Linda Chen, and I ended up working for the Garden City office as a weekend front desk. So that's how we met.
Yeah, you were a workaholic back in the day.
Yeah. So I had a full-time job, and then I came and worked for you guys on the weekends.
What were you doing on your full-time job?
I worked for a company called Graphic Image, and they were like a family company that manufactured leather goods. So
That's right.
anything from like fashion accessories to photo albums to notebooks and all that stuff. So I just was looking for something more, like I said, to supplement my income. Didn't have kids at the time, and so I just wanted to make as much money as possible. So I started working for you guys, 2016.
I remember
say.
you on the weekends.
Mhm. Well, you were obviously really heavily involved with your team at that point, and you were always in the office. So I saw you every weekend.
That's
You were
right.
there all day, every day. So that's how
You
we.
must have been really happy.
Oh, it's great. Well, no, but that's I think how everything kind of unfolded, right? Because
That's true.
we got to work together. You got to know me. At least this is my version of the story.
There you go.
I started. I did some things for your team.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
With like the leads and stuff like that, gathering, information from expires and FISBOs
Oh, that's what I'm
back
still calling,
then.
yeah.
Because you were cold calling a lot,
That's
and you
right.
had people on your team too. So I did that, and again, I think, and that was back when you just had Garden City, but you were working on your
Woodbury.
second location, and I remember after working, there for a little bit, and you got to know me. We started having conversations of other opportunities. One of them was to work for your team, and then the other was possibly working for the Woodbury location.
That's right. Now, Annabelle was the MCA already.
Yes, yeah. So she was the MCA of Garden City. She did go on maternity leave at one point, and I filled in for her
That's right.
as well. So
Because you came on as the Woodbury, and you were, what's the name
Yeah.
of it, right? Because you took over the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
MCA
So
position.
basically, I ended up leaving the full-time job and started working for you full-time, even before, the Woodbury office was like officially launched. And so I kind of was helping out in Garden City, especially when Annabelle went on maternity leave.
So what was that like, going from fashion to numbers?
It was interesting. And actually, when I did work in the fashion company, I was working with numbers. So I was dealing a lot with their commissions because basically it was a company that repped different, fashion designers, and we did sales. So we got a piece of the sales. So I was helping the accounting department. So it's not the same, but I was around numbers. But it was definitely different because
What were you doing for the accountant department? Was that accounts
processing,
receivable?
yeah. So I was processing all of their commissions. They had to pay monthly fees to be part of our, to be
Part of
repped
your
by
network.
us and things like that. Yeah, we did trade shows and stuff like that, and sales. So yeah, I'd never been in real estate before, so that was like the biggest change, I think. Just kind of understanding that model and understanding that world.
So let's go back a little bit. Where'd you buy your first house?
So it's in Levittown.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
still there.
That's where you still live,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that was in 2016?
No, that was in 2010.
2010?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, we bought it like right when they had like a first time home buyer credit
Credits,
and yeah. So I did things a little backwards in my life, but that's okay. Yeah. So
Did okay.
yeah, no,
Can't complain,
I
right?
think it's pretty good.
You're doing pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
So you end up in the MCA role. What is it like being an MCA, again, leaving that
Mhm.
front desk, now working full-time for Woodbury, because we're launching that, and then Annabelle goes on maternity leave?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I always say I think I had a great leg up from a lot of other people that have been in my position because I had a lot of extra time training with Annabelle. So and I've heard this from a few people that the launch of Woodbury was like one of the most successful launches
It was a good launch, yeah.
because you had people in place that kind of knew what they were doing already versus kind of figuring it out as they went along. So because of all that extra time that I had with Annabelle, I think that really helped.
How long was that?
I mean, it was almost like a year.
Was it that long?
It was a decent time, yeah.
So Sue Ford was still there.
Yeah. So
was
she
the
was
TL,
still there
right?
at that point. And then I mean, it was up until we weren't officially in the building yet, but she was like around when they were doing all the construction and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. She was a beast. I liked her.
Yeah. No, she
I
was a
really did.
recruiting machine.
Yeah, I liked her a lot.
Yeah.
I still do like her.
Yeah.
So she was your TL.
Mhm.
Did you launch? Was she with us when we launched Woodbury?
Not officially, no. I mean, she was there for the approvals, but like she wasn't there when we like officially were in the building and like actually in the office.
Because John Evans came in.
started,
Because she
yeah.
went to Harpug at that point.
Yeah.
With Dave. Her and Dave
Correct.
went together, and
Yeah.
they were doing the Harpug office that unfortunately never took off.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it's going to be Smith.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you're going through all of that, but again, what is that like going through? Yeah, I know you had all the training in the world, but what is it like mindset wise, going from, basically just thrown into the mix, and it's a pretty crazy job too. Right?
I do feel like my time at the front desk really helped because, when we first launched, we didn't have a huge staff, right? That's just not our model. We need to get to a certain point with, production financially before we add on staff members. So even launching, like you're still doing pretty much everything. It's usually, you have a front desk, MC, and TL if you're lucky. So I do think working at the front desk helped because you kind of learn everything from the bottom up. Obviously, as the MCA, you're at a different level. You're, really leading the team. You're really overseeing the office. But I think it helped because I can understand what the other team members are going through. I did that job. I know how to do it, so I can help train to it. I know what's needed, what's not needed. So I think that really helped. And I think it really helped, hone my own leadership skills, what worked, what didn't work. Especially by now, I've been through a few different teams. So I think each team, helps me get better and better.
Better and better what you do.
Yeah.
So when you first got in, so John's your TL.
Yeah.
And another good guy, but whatever. Awesome person. Though. I love him to death too. He goes in there. You guys open up, and then I guess a little while later, Lauren comes into the role. Right? She gets hired and she goes into that role. Tell me about that transition. What was that like?
That was actually a really seamless transition. And honestly too, we did have a good 6 months without a team leader, and actually you stepped in, and that was pretty seamless too. Because if you look back at the multi-year trends, we didn't dip at all.
Really?
Yeah, like we still hit our numbers. Oh. Yeah, when John left and you stepped in, we didn't.
How
really,
long were we out without a team?
I want to say like 6 months, maybe.
I did not know that. I thought she came right in after that.
No.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
We hired her when? Because we opened up in August.
So I want to say
September, August.
I want to say towards the end of 2019, because I remember the holiday party was her first day. One of the holiday parties was the first day.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, she went. We got her from the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Barry found her.
Yep.
Introduced her to me. It was out of her, the guy from Westchester, I believe, one of the other agents that were torn. I think he went to the Bronx, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, but you and Lauren hit it off right from the bat.
Yeah, that was a pretty seamless transition. I think, obviously, she was coming from the KW world, so that helped immensely. She was an assistant team leader at that point, so she knew what needed to be done. There really wasn't much training that she needed to go through. We got along really well, and it worked amazingly. And I always say, I think what really helped was she didn't treat me as someone who just cut the checks, they say. She really treated me as a business partner. We consulted on a lot of things. And at that point, you had 2 market centers. We kind of knew what needed to be done. We didn't bother you.
That was great.
We didn't, and it's kind of my MO. I really don't bother you unless I really need to.
I appreciate that.
I kind of, whether it's good or bad, sometimes I just do it and ask for forgiveness later. Yep. But I feel like I kind of know what's my limit, what decisions I can make, what decisions I need to get your approval on. So, with Lauren and I, we really kind of were a really good team. We had a really good front desk, and it was just really easy. And it was just a great, I think, combination.
And then you guys were really good at hiring too, obviously. You hired Julia, was one of your first hires, and she's still with us.
One of the first hires that I made was one of your favorite people. Her name was Jessica at the front desk. She's the one who sang.
Oh,
she's the one who sang Disney songs. Yes. But I remember the interview process, and I remember just having this feeling of I just need this person in our world, right? And so I feel knowing that gut instinct really helps you with decision making. And obviously with Keller's, the KPA, there's a whole system to really make sure that you're hiring the right person. Yep. But sometimes it's just your initial gut feeling. I think that helps. So that was a really great hire. And she was with us until
Did she break into song when she was on the interview?
No, she didn't. I don't know if that would have changed my mind, but the agents loved her. She was so friendly.
I remember her. Yeah,
You know,
she's
so
good.
that was really great.
Where did she end up?
She works for, I forgot. She works for some company out east, I want to say, but not in like real estate or anything.
Good for her.
Yeah. But yeah, so she was with us, and then we grew the office a little bit more until we can get our next hire.
When did Julia come along?
I forget the year. I want to say 2019. Yeah, I want to say 2019. That was definitely a longer process than we thought because we knew we wanted this next hire, but we were hesitant to kind of take on that expense. We really wanted to make sure that we were ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely dragged it on a little bit. But again, I think, meeting her and really having that feeling that it was like the right person and hoping that she understood our process.
Who took Julia through the KPA? You or Lauren?
We both did.
You did?
Yeah. There was a lot of interviews, a lot of back and forth. But we really wanted to make sure it was like the right time.
I would say you guys did a really good job at hiring people.
Yeah, I think
You guys did an
we
awesome job.
did.
You still do.
Yeah.
You do a very good job at that.
And I think I'm pretty good at that. I think I'm pretty good at the hiring process, knowing who I think has the potential. And then also the training, I think, too, because that, I think, is everything. So I think because I've been in a bunch of different roles, I think I can really train the people to do exactly what we need to do. I'm very transparent about what our expectations are. And so that way there's no mistake. And if they accept to work for us, they know what they're getting themselves into. And it fits most of the time.
That's awesome. And then what do you look for in the KPAs when you're doing your hiring? I know it depends on what job it is, but let's say it's a marketing person.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a skill set, for that type of role, creativity and things like that. But in general, I usually look for that history. I want to see that, they're not jumping around too much, that they're committed to the companies that they work for. And I generally, in speaking with them, right, are they someone that can, come into our group, that can get along with the rest of the leadership team, that are very, people-oriented, customer service-oriented, because that is our business, right? Do they like talking to people? Do they like helping people? Like, that's a huge thing. And I think when you're talking to someone, you can kind of sense that, right? So, and obviously with the APA, the questions that were asked and things like that, like you learn so much about people that right off the bat, I think, if they're someone that can make it or not.
So when you were looking for your positions, how many people did you interview prior to making the decision?
I mean, I've interviewed for so many different roles, and I feel like throughout these years, especially when what the market is, there's so many people looking for jobs out there. You get so many different resumes. What I usually do is I just weed through them. Then I'll do like a little bit of like a phone or like a Zoom interview just to kind of make sure that they are who they say they are, that they can actually just hold a conversation and like somewhat normal before like bringing them in to like meet in person. And so I'll kind of like weed them through. And depending on the role, right? Like I remember when we were interviewing for the MCA in New York City, that obviously is like a very special skill set. So there weren't as many candidates, right, for that type of role. But I remember presenting at least, I think, like 3 to 4 candidates to you and Matt at the time to kind of help make that decision. And then kind of keep narrowing it down as like you go further along into the interview process. So I always like a few options to pick from. That way you can kind of compare them against each other.
When you're doing your review of everything and you're looking at their resume and you're looking at their references, do you go like 3 deep or you go 9 deep?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like I was getting obsessed with it where I would call you, get 3 names from you, then call them and end up like 80 names.
Yeah.
And then break it down. Are you doing that or are you going a little bit more less than that? And
I mean, I think it depends on the role. You know what I mean? I think a role like the front desk, I don't think you need to go so crazy. I think with a role like MCA, especially because of that trust that needs to be there and the money situation, I think that's super important. And I think that if you can't go that deep, that's usually a problem, right?
That's right, yeah.
Like if you start hitting roadblocks for whatever reason, it usually is not a good sign. So I think even that kind of helps with the interview process.
Remember a great story, Michael Brandt told me this one, and that's what made me go deep when I was hiring, especially when I was looking at the GM position, where he was doing an interview, really liked the person. Something told him to just go 3 more deep, and he ended up finding out that the person, I'm not going to mention names, you might know him, but the person was lending money out.
Oh, jeez.
And
God.
like gangster shit,
Oh,
where he was,
jeez.
pummeling people when they didn't pay him. And
no.
he was like, yeah, he had a temper, the guy. And
Oh, yeah, no.
obviously he didn't hire him. He put him off lightly.
Yeah.
But you go deep, you find out about people that, you don't want to find out some shit, but you find out.
Correct, yeah.
And it's interesting,
Yeah.
right? Like, what's the craziest, and not mentioning names, like do you remember anything offhand, like the craziest thing you learned about somebody? Or
Well, I remember, I forget what role it was for, but I remember I was doing my initial, and it wasn't even that deep. And I remember setting up a Zoom interview with someone, and their name was Diana. So I was like, okay. So I get on a Zoom, and they said their name was Princess Diana. So I was like,
awesome.
Okay, all right. I mean, listen, everyone's different. But again, it's those types of conversations that you can really see if they would be a good fit for our group.
It's really perfect, I think.
You know what I mean? So it's things like
awesome.
that. But funny enough, I mean, when you're interviewing, you're not really supposed to talk much at all. Let them do all the talking because they will expose so much.
Yeah.
When you're quiet, it really helps. And I feel like, I mean, that's like with like interrogation, right? Yeah. Like you're not really doing much. They do it themselves.
Well, I tell everybody, if you're looking for a job, let the other person do all the talking. Because,
Right.
if they're doing all the talking, they're going to feel like
Right.
there's nothing wrong with you,
Right.
obviously. So
Well,
it's like a cat and mouse game in a way.
Yeah.
You got to ask good questions, obviously.
For sure, yeah. But it's
As
also
it-
the same thing. I remember you always also telling me that on the opposite, when, unfortunately you have to let someone go, it's like you get to a point where they almost fire themselves.
So you let them fire themselves.
So I've learned that from you as well for that,
them-
tidbit. So
Put them in your position.
yeah.
And let them do it. Yeah, it's the worst thing in the world having to do is firing somebody. So you end up in that role. When did you end up starting to work with Brad?
I mean, I started coaching with him right away. Yeah, like you were always very adamant about your staff being in coaching. So I started coaching with him right away, and I think that really helped as well.
And what did he teach you about the job? And I'm sure
I
a
mean,
lot. But
yeah. So in the beginning, I was coaching along with Annabelle. So we would have calls together. And in the beginning, it was really helping just with the launch of Woodbury and getting like all the systems up and going and things like that. And then, as you progress in your role, I mean, obviously the conversations change. Like they become less about, they're still about the numbers, but they become bigger conversations about opportunities and leadership skills and things like that. So every day could be different. Every call could be different, but it's definitely have gotten a little bit deeper through the years. But he's been a great person to kind of, bounce ideas off of, and I talked to him about pretty much everything that goes on.
he helped with the launch, obviously.
Oh, yeah. He helped with the launch. And then each, I've stepped foot in pretty much all of your market centers at this point. So each move I've made, he's helped with that as well.
So we launch Woodbury. You guys take it to a success.
Yeah.
And then I take Lauren out and make her the team leader, and then you followed.
Yeah. I want to say
We decimated Woodbury at that point.
Yeah. So Woodbury was March of 18, and then you took over.
Well,
the
we
New
had
York
Franklin Square first.
Yes. That's the
Franklin
only
Square.
market center I don't think I've been involved in too much. But and then you took over New York City right in the middle of COVID.
That was the worst. I know. Oh
The worst
my
and the
God.
best.
It was. It was
You
the
know what
rest
I
and the
mean?
best, but that was scary.
I want to say like February, March, you really started in 2020. And then I didn't go over until end of 2020, maybe like October of 2020, I would say.
Because she had Nick there. As the
Yeah, you
MC.
had another MC there. And then once that role was open, I moved there. So
So, yeah, that was funny. We got the approval in right after family reunion in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Texas, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I was flying home when we got the approval. And
Yeah.
then I think I literally wrote the check.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, and Brian wrote the check for, I think, 3 days prior for the region. I wrote the check for the market center 3 days later. The day it closed is the day everything shut down.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I just lost $2 million or whatever it was that in a second. It was just boom. But it turned out to be the best thing for us.
No,
Obviously.
absolutely.
It worked out well,
Got a great
with everything.
deal on the rent.
Great deal in the rent. And the way we did that move was, we told that story over and over again, where it was moving out of Midtown to Tribeca and then moving Tribeca back down.
Consolidating everything, yeah.
And then it wasn't being caught by the real deal or anybody because everything was shut down, so nobody knew anything. So it was the perfect storm at the right time. And then we started making money, and real money. It was great.
Yeah.
I like that Tribeca office, though. I don't know. Did you ever see it?
No, I never saw it.
It was a beautiful office.
Yeah.
I was going to buy the building from it. It was a condo.
Oh, nice.
And we're buying it, and at the last second, Alon changed his mind. But I don't even know what happened with it. But that would have been a sweet spot.
Yeah.
To own that property in the city, and being downtown, that would have been perfect. So you end up in. Well, let's stay with Woodbury, because now, what is it like not working with Lauren? Who's the TL in that position now, and what is that like?
Well, in the beginning, I think I actually was involved in both a little bit. So
because that's when we started having a lot of turnover in that position.
Yeah. So when I moved into the city, we had Jessica, who's at the front. She kind of stepped in a little bit to be almost like an assistant MC in Woodbury, and I would pop in, just kind of like oversee things, and I would do the transmittals and stuff like that at the time. So it's kind of having hand in both. And then Lauren, she went into the city, so you had Tio take over, and Woodbury is there. So so everything.
Now, were
had
you
been
working
running.
with Tio or no?
I worked with him for a little bit, yeah, because I was still kind of overseeing things and popping in. So I definitely was there with him too.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're working for Tio.
Yeah.
And then probably one of the most competitive people I ever met.
Yes,
right?
for sure.
And then you end up getting pulled away and going into the city at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then what's that transition like, going back to the city now from Long Island?
That was definitely a transition for sure. Because up until then, my commute was like 10 minutes, which was amazing. And I hadn't been commuting into the city for like 10 years. We got used to it, I think. Like, you get used to things pretty quickly. So it was just adjusting, we wake up a little earlier, that sort of thing. It was nice because I had that time on the train to read, check emails, that type of thing. And it was just something you had to do. So
what was that like, though, that mess in the city? Because that was a disaster, too.
Yeah. I mean, well, by the time I got into the city, actually, I first started driving. When we first started going, I started driving until things like opened up a little bit more, and then started taking the train. But yeah, it wasn't that bad.
Well, we were right up the block from Grand Central too.
Well, Grand Central
you were going to Penn
open
Station
then,
though,
yeah.
right?
So because we were closer there, so we're at the original building, and so I would take my walk to the office, and that was just like my new norm, and it just. You get used to it.
Yeah.
But just working in the city though in general with that office and every office has a different feel, right? The agents in every office, they're a different group. So just getting used to that was different.
What's the difference between the Long Island and nothing bad?
No.
Like that, but what's the?
I think like in the city, the agents are just much more like business oriented. Like they were not there for like games, pizza parties, like they were there to like make money. Even communicating, like they were much more like emails versus phone calls. I remember even because Lauren had been in the city before, so she kind of prepped me on what to expect. But a lot of the agents that were there had been with Keller for a really long time, so that definitely helped. They were kind of, we definitely had to win them over because of the change in ownership and get them used to the way that our group ran things. And then obviously Lauren and Fanny really worked hard to get all of them back, under your new ownership. you were present in the city a lot, so that definitely helped things as well. But yeah, they're just more like business. I mean, obviously, the deals that they're working on are huge price point. They take a little bit longer, so it's just a different
Mindset, yeah,
vibe.
bro.
But yeah, so it took a little cleaning up. It took a little consolidating and things like that. We had to look at literally every expense and see what we could readjust, what made sense, what didn't, and quickly turn that market around like really quickly.
Yeah, that turned around pretty quick.
Yeah.
We did a good job on that.
Yeah.
And then after that, we decided to open up. What was it? Was it Ozone Park came next or Brooklyn?
Ozone Park, yeah.
Ozone Park came,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
John was still running it. He just brought them
Yes.
into our group.
Mhm,
So Ozone Park comes in.
mhm.
We buy into that.
Yeah.
You didn't really have much to do with that,
No,
right?
no. Yeah, I never like went there or anything like that, but just helping them get acclimated and things like that.
Just get
Yeah.
into. What was
Mhm.
that like? Working with somebody that's not used to working with the core.
Yeah, I think that was interesting because they were definitely used to doing things their way. They had been with Keller for so long, and but we had that relationship already, so it was easy to work with them. But I think sometimes it's harder you know, to make that transition versus like starting something from
Sure.
scratch.
Yep.
It's hard to get rid of those like habits. Um,
And it's frustrating.
yeah. Oh no, for sure. So
Because
yeah.
we're so used to hitting a certain number and then
Yeah, and we still are obviously very numbers driven. We have goals. I mean, we have goals that we have with KWRI, but then we have our own goals that we have with you, which are a lot higher, and we take them really seriously. And not everyone is on that same wavelength. So,
it's tough.
Yeah.
So Ozone Park, then
Mhm.
we grabbed Brooklyn, I'm assuming, right? Brooklyn came.
Yes. Then Brooklyn came.
Annabelle had more to do with Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, Annabelle. Yeah, because at that point,
You were doing
I
Woodbury.
was still, like in New York City it's a huge
Yeah.
company. Yeah. So I was still helping Woodbury. So Annabelle kind of took on Brooklyn.
Well, in New York City, how many transactions were you doing a month?
I mean, hundreds and hundreds, especially in the summer with the rentals. I mean, we could just do 200-300 rentals
I remember, yeah.
alone. Not counting sales. So, and it takes the same amount of time to process a rental versus a sale.
Right.
So, and the amount of onboarding that we would do as well, and
Those numbers were insane back
Yeah,
then.
yeah, it just flowed.
Right.
So
good.
it was impossible to do more than that.
Yeah, we did a lot.
Yeah.
And then, what would you say your biggest number was? 1,000 for the month?
I would say, yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
1,000 transactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember Alan coming in with I remember
Oh.
on the weekend just signing checks for hours.
He would do so many. We had to open up an account just for him
Remember that?
because he had so much coming in that we couldn't keep track of it otherwise.
It was
It
insane.
was crazy.
The business
It was insane.
So, all right. So now we open up Brooklyn,
Mm-hmm.
and Brooklyn's going.
Mhm.
Then we get into Massapequa, I think, right? We bought Massapequa. I become the OP of Massapequa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
transition now, so I guess that's similar to the way Ozone Park was,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
did you have much to? Not really, right?
No, because they had their team running and things like that. So yeah, didn't really get too involved with that one either. It wasn't until Manhasset would be your last one.
That was the last one. Was
Mhm.
Gold Coast.
Mhm.
Let me ask you another question on
Mhm.
that. The coaching. What do you think of the coaching? Like one guy coaching everybody in our world, or should we open it up to more like multiple coaches for?
I mean, I think there's pros and cons because I do feel like one coach coaching, let's say like all the MCAs, like for sure they're hearing like the same message.
Yep.
And especially if they're all under the same ownership group, I definitely think that helps. But also not everyone gets along with people and not everyone vibes with that. So, there could be something to be said depending on the role that maybe there is a different coach. It may not be the right fit, but so far I think it's working,
I think it's interesting though too. Like you and Annabelle now, and you guys been with me for so long. You know what to do, how to run it, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's just who was I talking to about this? I think it was Michael Brand also, where we were talking about where it becomes just too much accountability,
Yeah.
right? For
Yeah.
the MCAs,
Mhm.
there's no such thing as too much accountability, but
Right.
in some way. There's a lot of accountability in our world, right? Because
Yeah. Well, I think it's when you're being held accountable to too many people, right? Like,
yeah, I guess that's
you know
it.
what I mean? Because I do think like it's you, it's Lauren, our GM, it could be our maps coach, and sometimes it's even to me and Annabelle, right? Like,
Sure.
because me and Annabelle definitely hold the other MC as accountable to some things, even in a, not official way, but, because we know what needs to be done. We're also held accountable to the region and KW. So that could be where it gets a little tricky when you're kind of answering to so many different people. But that's kind of Keller, right? And that's kind of what you get yourself into
Yeah, no, you're right.
in this world. And if you don't want that, it's probably not the right
Not
fit.
the right fit.
You have to be okay with that.
So Massapequa now, and then
Mhm.
we end up grabbing Manhasset
Yeah.
Gold Coast.
That was like May of 23.
May of 23, we
Mhm.
buy that.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was a weird one.
That was an interesting one for sure. Because I remember you were like, "Yeah, I need you to help out in
Remember that?
Manhasset."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, whatever you need."
Now you were still in the city.
I was
though.
still in the city, yeah. So I was splitting my time between the two. And at that point, we didn't have a TL in place.
Well, we have, what's her name, right? Caitlin? Was it Caitlin or?
Well, no. So I had an AMCA in the city, so that kind of helped me, step away from like the day
What was
to
her name
day.
again?
Caitlin.
Caitlin, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
But we didn't have a TL in Manhasset at the time when we first took over. So we kind of just were working with the existing agents that we had. We weren't really onboarding too many people. So it worked for a little bit, for sure. Just to kind of get the lay of the land.
That was an interesting one because of the history, too.
Yeah, it was not great. But we kind of had to figure out like what was going on. When you got in there, you made some staff, changes and things like that. Because we really had to like assess what made sense. So we kind of like started from scratch a little bit. I think you have to.
I think that was more, and usually when I go into these things, I always went with the mindset. I don't know if you knew this or you probably did. First 30 days, I'm just looking at what's going on. 60 days, same thing. 90 days, okay, let's start taking action. And then after that, it's like, okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
Manhasset was a different animal because that was something where the numbers could be so great, and they were at one time. And then for whatever reason, I guess the competition between us and everything going on, we're dead smack, and I guess in the middle of two powerhouses with Bayside and then Garden City at the time. And then Woodbury up the block, it was they were just in a weird position, I think. But they were an amazing market center because they did a lot of business. But that was an interesting purchase, I guess, in a nice way to say it.
And I think too, like with your usual method, I don't think we had the ability and the time to wait that long because we made changes like right off the bat.
Yeah, that
like,
was done.
We couldn't not. Like we had to make some difficult decisions, but that's business. You know?
That wasn't something where you sit and assess
No.
it. We actually went in and made the moves right away to fix what we had to fix.
Because I think in the other market centers, things were going well, right? So you didn't really have to do much.
Right.
This was a little different. So we were a little bit more aggressive. We looked at every expense. We cut whatever we needed to cut. We really looked at everything. And I think that's what helped get it on track a lot sooner than what we thought it would. Like we thought it was going to take a lot longer to get it back on track.
Well, they did interesting things before we got in there.
Yeah.
Like buy bunnies for Easter and no, but it was interesting. It was just I guess a different way to look at things. I guess than what we want.
It was written differently than what we would have liked to have seen.
Right. It's when you look at it, it's But I guess it makes sense in some ways where it's sort of like the way the city was run, too, when I first bought it.
Oh, for sure.
You know, where it was just spend.
Oh, yeah.
There was a point where I think we even got into that where I'm starting to analyze now where it was just, okay, just hire. And that's not the right way to do it, you know, because you end up, then you got to fire because you're not getting the right people to go into that position.
Yeah.
I want to ask you another question when you go in, because you, like I said, you did a lot of good hires. Did you ever come into the point where you're looking at a hire and knowing that they went through like ChatGPT to get the answers or anything like that? Did you ever notice stuff like that?
I mean, I honestly Not until recently, right? Because, a lot of the hires that I've done, that wasn't there back then, right?
Okay.
So that really was never even like a thought until more recently. And then when you're actually talking to the person and how they're speaking doesn't match either
Yeah.
what their email sounded like or what their resume looks like, you can kind of sense that something is up. Um, I mean, I don't know how I feel, but I feel like everyone uses it for something. So
Sure.
I can't really knock it. Um, but you can definitely tell that it doesn't match.
And it's got to be interesting, like when you're hiring at that level now, because people do it.
Oh,
Because I fell for it a
absolutely.
couple times with hires
Yeah.
where I saw it, and I was like,
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it's interesting the way you got to really look at people now when you're hiring people. I don't mean to go backwards, but
Yeah.
I was just curious on that. So you get Manhasset up and running.
Mhm.
We hire Ashley to go
Mhm.
into that role, and
Yep.
what an amazing job she does,
Yeah.
right? She goes in there and turns it around. What was that like?
That was a little bit of a transition because I feel like the team that was there, it was a dead market center, so the staff was kind of used to that. There wasn't a lot to do. Um, but then once Ashley came on board and she started recruiting at a high level, things picked up. Like everybody's job got a lot busier, their plate got fuller. So I think that was a little bit of a tricky transition for some people to get used to like the amount of work that was needed. Um, but I mean, that's what they say, like recruiting solves everything because, we were
At least in our
recruiting at a
world.
high
Yeah.
level, right? Production picked up, agents. Usually it's the top agents that are doing most of the production, but we were seeing like the new agents doing deals and closing business, which was great. So everything improved, recruiting numbers, profitability. I mean, we were profitable, and we weren't expecting that for a long time.
Yeah, we had like a projection of what, like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then she turned it
Like a few
around. You guys
months.
turned it around pretty quick.
Yeah.
And now Linda's the OP there, so
Mhm.
hopefully it goes well. And
Yeah.
then um, I'm excited to see what happens with that place because
Yeah.
that's a special market center. I think that's a special market um, because that's like perfect location too.
Yeah.
I think that place can be a real gold mine. And I
Yeah,
think
you
it
always said
is.
that.
Yeah, because just look at the location. Like you're sitting borderline of Queens and Long Island. It's just a perfect,
Mhm.
and the price points there are just
It's
amazing.
high.
You could
Mhm.
deal with everything,
Yeah.
and it's going to be I'm excited to see where that place goes. So looking forward, where do you see us going in the future? Like with the core, I know Smithtown and Brooklyn, and
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what we end up doing, what you end up expanding into. But I think if we keep taking what we do best, our model, and just kind of transferring it to either each new market center or whatever else that we get into, I think that will help us. I pretty much will go wherever you tell me to go, so it depends on you. But I do kind of like this like niche that I've gotten into where I kind of go to a new place and kind of either help turn it around or help open it because of the things that I've learned or the things that I've done. I think it's pretty easy for me to do that. So I kind of like that idea. Either turning something around or just starting something from scratch. So, so
what do you like doing
hopefully.
more? Starting turning something around or scratch?
I
Because you've
don't
been a part of both.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been part of both. I don't know, to be honest. Um, there's something to be said about starting something on your own, right? Like just kind of putting your stamp on it. Um, I don't know. They both have challenges, but I think starting something new is more fun.
Hmm.
Because turning something around, it's definitely more challenging. If especially if it comes with like a team already in place and things like that, it definitely takes a little bit more harder work and a little bit more time. But they're both exciting. So
And the cool
I'm
thing
good
is you
with
get to give
either.
opportunity to people like
Well,
yourself.
that's the thing. I mean, and other people too, right? And I think that's kind of what we saw, let's say with Julia, right? Because, my whole thing is like, get into your role, learn it, nail it, and opportunities will come. So I think and that's what I try to like teach, everyone that's on my teams. And I think she really like took that to heart, and she really nailed her role. She saw the opportunities and ran with it. And then you get rewarded from that. So, and the more market centers we launch or, pick up, then everyone has that opportunity.
It's funny. I think with the new acquisition with Stone Point coming in, it gave me new life. I'm more excited. Not that Keller didn't. I think it's just, the excitement of just seeing what's going to happen in the near future gets me pumped up to go out and do more.
I think it's exciting, and I was actually thinking about it. Like, I've actually experienced all my big milestones, good and bad, like with Keller, like all of them. And so I think, not to like pat you on the back, but I think it's just the like.
No, we wouldn't do that.
I think it's just the environment that you and Keller kind of allows, right, to kind of give that work-life balance that provides opportunities for everyone, that provides the ability to kind of live life but still have this great opportunity. So I think that's really exciting.
And then what do we got going on in May?
So in May, we're going to be doing May 22nd, I believe. We're going to be doing a fundraiser at Governor's Comedy Club in Levittown to raise money for the National Heart Association in honor of my late husband, Paul Bistany, and our agent, Gina Padro's late husband as well. So that's going to be really exciting.
Anybody we know performing? Or?
I don't know, to be honest. I think there's like a bunch of people.
We should make Matt get up there since
he's not funny.
I know, but he says he was a comedian.
I don't believe it. He's not funny.
Hopefully he's here so you can hear that.
I'll tell him to his face.
I know you would. Rebecca, this has been awesome. I have to have you back. I want to have all the MCAs one day come on.
That will be very exciting.
Very interesting conversation.
We can talk numbers all day.
Yeah, sit there and talk numbers.
No, thank you.
Thank you for everything you do for me. I really appreciate you. I love you.
Thank
If you ever need anything, you know where I am.
I know. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Appreciate it.